Welcome to Sunday Square Off. I'm Bram Resnick. On today's show, new warnings about Arizona's 20-year drought, one of the worst in more than 1,000 years. Then a different kind of water story. Why is an East Valley water company under fire from customers for poor service, diverting tens of millions of dollars in customer payments out of state? Also, meet the Democrat challenging Republican Attorney General Mark Brnovich in the fall. But first, how bad is this drought? Here's what one expert says. Our current 20-year drought is one of the worst drought cycles over the past 1,200 plus years. That dire analysis from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, the federal agency that operates the Lake Mead Reservoir in northern Arizona. That's a vital source of water for our state. The 20-year drought has drained Lake Mead to perilously low levels. Now, spring is usually dry in Arizona, but this spring is historically dry. Today, 75% of the state is under extreme or exceptional drought conditions, the driest ratings. 1 year ago, those extreme dry conditions existed nowhere in Arizona. That's according to the U.S. Drought Monitor. I spoke with Sandy Barr, director of the Arizona chapter of the Sierra Club, and Dave White, director of Arizona State University's Decision Center for a Desert City, also one of the state's leading water experts. They tell me there is a sense of growing urgency now about dealing with this drought. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Let's deal with that statement at the top of the show there. One of the driest periods in a millennium, Dave. Okay, you're a scientist. How do scientists know that?
Well, we look at historic records, which include both observations and historical analysis of tree rings and other data to let us know the flow in the major reservoirs and the conditions in the soil and the atmosphere, which let us know that the current drought is historic and severe.
And so how much farther down the drought road, so to speak, does this take us? Because we've been talking about this for a while. So how much farther does this take us in terms of the severity and the urgency of dealing with it?
Well, it's important to put this particular drought monitor result in context. As you noted, the Bureau of Reclamation has identified this as one of the most significant dry periods in the last millennium. And so this particular period is only one indication of more than 19 years of extended below average precipitation and above average temperatures that cause concern for both the water supply and the water demand in our region.
Okay, and so I'll ask also about the cry wolf scenario. We've been talking about this for years. We'd never quite get to all the alarms going off. Just a couple years ago, a very wet winter, a lot of runoff into our reservoirs. This year, a very dry winter, no runoff into our reservoirs. So what should that tell us? If, you know, I know it's a small snapshot, but what should that tell us?
Well, it tells us that we shouldn't look at just 1 year or one season, but we look at those longer term trends. And that's why this is so significant, because we're looking at 1,200 years. We're looking at a time when demand is increasing and supplies are decreasing. And when we overlay the impacts of climate change, which we know are hotter, drier for our communities, it's pretty significant. We don't want to wait until we have an actual crisis to address it.
And that was a message from the Bureau of Reclamation. And we haven't talked about the fire danger up north. You know, we had the teacher strike just a couple weeks ago here across Arizona. If that strike hadn't been going on, we would have been paying attention to a pretty serious fire up in Payson. You would have seen every TV camera there and full coverage. How severe is that threat now?
It's quite significant. Our forests are very dry. Some of the forests aren't in very good condition because of years of logging, overgrazing, and fire suppression. And so now when we do get fires, they are more extreme, more intense. And we didn't have much snowpack at all this year, so that's huge.
The runoff at historic lows. Yeah. So let's talk about Lake Mead. That's the source of much of our water. It's the subject of a big battle now among all the western states. How much greater is the danger that Arizona's allotment from Lake Mead, we depend on that more than other states, will be cut in coming years because lake levels keep falling?
Well, currently we're estimating about a 50% probability of a declaration of a shortage on the Colorado River by 2020. And so the states need to be preparing now, and they are preparing, but I believe there should be a greater sense of urgency to implement the drought contingency plans and other efforts to ensure that we maintain the level of Lake Mead above that critical threshold, which is 1,075 feet above sea level. And there have been some effective strategies, but we need more of those, and we need better coordination between the lower basin states and the upper basin states to ensure that we avoid the risk of a shortage.
So worst drought in a millennium, really bad winter. You drive through California, you see lakes that are lost, you see rivers that are lost. How close is Arizona to that scenario?
Well, we've already lost some of our rivers. I mean, look at the Gila River. If you drive down to Tucson or something, you've got a dry riverbed. So we've already dammed, diverted, and through groundwater pumping, dried up a fair number of our rivers. That's one of the things that we need to think about is if we want to hold on to like the Upper Verde River or the San Pedro, we have to really think about limiting groundwater pumping around those rivers.
So increasing urgency, at what point do you reach a tipping point where historic rainfalls might not replenish, the land?
Right.
And are we there now?
Personally, I do believe we are there, and I think that the important thing is to look at these as long-term challenges and not allow short-term weather conditions to dictate long-term water planning. So we need to think about this in terms of decades and think about what the historical climate has been and what we are anticipating our future climate to be, and not let one wet winter relieve too much of the pressure on our politicians and our policymakers to take action to secure the water supplies that we need, which underlie everything that we care about in the state. Our economy, our environmental values, our community values, all of that rests on the security of our water supplies.